I never imagined that my peaceful backyard would become ground zero for a suburban turf war. But that's exactly what unfolded the moment Sandra Mitchell, known not so affectionately around here as HOA Karen, set her sights on my roses. It all began 3 months ago when I moved into Oakwood Estates, a charming little neighborhood known for its perfectly trimmed hedges and identical homes. As a professional landscape architect, I couldn't wait to breathe some life into my dull backyard. I envisioned a garden that was not only stunning but also eco-friendly, filled with native species that conserved water and attracted local wildlife. Before I planted a single flower, I combed through the HOA's guidelines to ensure every detail of my design met the standards. Confident everything was in line, I spent weeks crafting my dream garden. Then, the morning after I'd finished planting, came the knock, a sharp, impatient pounding at the door. And there she was, Sandra Mitchell in all her clipboard-wielding glory, frowning like I'd just committed a felony. "I've received multiple complaints about your yard," she snapped, her voice cold and accusatory. But it was clear she was the sole complainant. "Your plants exceed the maximum height limit by 2 inches, and that color scheme? Completely unapproved by the architectural committee." I kept my tone calm, explaining that I had meticulously reviewed the rules. My plants were within the height limits. Some just looked taller before settling. As for the colors, there was no mention of approved or banned palettes for natural flora. I even offered to show her my documentation. She didn't bother to look. Instead, she gave me a patronizing smile and said, "I've run this HOA for 8 years. I think I know the rules better than someone who just moved in." Then came the ultimatum: 7 days to rip out everything and submit a proper proposal. With that, she spun around and strutted off like she owned the entire block. I wasn't too concerned, yet I had everything documented: pictures, receipts, copies of the HOA rules. I sent a courteous email to the board with the evidence, asking if I'd missed something. 2 members replied, both admitting my garden seemed compliant, but they conveniently deferred to Sandra's final authority. One board member even reached out privately to warn me. Sandra had a long-standing reputation for weaponizing HOA rules against anyone she didn't personally approve of. A week later, I found a formal violation notice in my mailbox. It cited obscure and vaguely worded sections of the rulebook that felt twisted beyond reason. Along with it came a threat: daily fines would begin in 48 hours if I didn't tear out the garden. It was absurd. I wasn't about to roll over. I decided to protect myself, not just from Sandra, but also from the occasional wildlife known to dig around in gardens here. I installed 4 high-definition motion-sensitive security cameras with night vision and cloud backup. They covered every angle of my yard, especially the garden. It wasn't cheap, but it brought peace of mind. 3 days after setting up the cameras, I had to leave town for a 2-day work trip. I wasn't worried. My garden was secure, or so I thought. My automated irrigation system was programmed to keep everything watered, and with the security cameras in place, I figured I could relax and keep an eye on things from afar. What I didn't expect was for Sandra to take our quiet feud and turn it into an all-out assault. On the 2nd day of my business trip, a motion alert popped up on my phone. Curious, I opened the app and instantly froze. There she was, Sandra, sitting in the driver's seat of a small bulldozer, like some villain, in a low-budget action movie. Her smug grin burned into my memory as I watched her steer the machine straight into my backyard. What followed was pure destruction. She rammed through my garden with mechanical precision, ripping up my carefully planted roses, native grasses, and pollinator-friendly blooms like they were weeds. My phone lit up with frantic messages from neighbors. "Do you know what's happening? Why is a bulldozer in your yard?" Panicked, I dialed 911 to report trespassing and property damage. Then I called my neighbor Mark, who promised to get over there immediately. Through my camera feed, I watched as Mark confronted her. Sandra didn't even flinch. She declared loudly that she was merely enforcing HOA rules and had no choice since I'd refused to comply. But when Mark casually mentioned the police were already on their way, her confidence visibly cracked. By the time law enforcement arrived, Sandra had reduced half my garden to rubble. The officers asked her to step down from the machine, and after a long pause and clear reluctance, she obeyed. I'm the HOA president, she said firmly, trying to sound official. It's within my authority to take action. The officers weren't buying it. They asked one simple question. Do you have a court order allowing you to enter private property and destroy it? Her silence answered for her. I stayed on the line, explained the full situation to the officers, and confirmed that I absolutely wanted to press charges. They took her in for questioning, and I booked the next flight home, heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and rage. What I found the next morning was worse than what I'd seen through the cameras. The destruction was overwhelming. Thousands of dollars worth of plants gone. My irrigation system shredded. Deep bulldozer tracks carved scars across what used to be a thriving landscape. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I was more determined than ever to hold Sandra responsible. I immediately got in touch with a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes and property law. After reviewing the footage and the HOA documentation I'd saved, he didn't hesitate. You've got a rock-solid case, he told me. Not only had Sandra trespassed and caused significant property damage, but she had blatantly misused her authority. The fact that I could prove my garden was fully compliant made her actions indefensible. Then things got even worse for her. The police investigation found out that Sandra had rented the bulldozer using HOA funds, claiming it was for community landscaping projects. That added fraud and financial misconduct to the list of charges. She was officially arrested the next day, looking nothing like the high and mighty tyrant from before. The local paper ran a feature on the incident, complete with snapshots from my security footage. Images of Sandra grinning as she tore through my yard like a villain in a soap opera. The HOA board immediately called an emergency meeting. Sandra, now cornered, tried to explain herself with trembling hands and a wavering voice. I was just doing my duty, she claimed. He violated multiple guidelines and refused to respond to official warnings. But when pressed to name exactly which rules I had broken, she couldn't give a straight answer. She fumbled, and the real unraveling had only just begun. Sandra stood before the HOA board, clutching her binder like it might save her. She flipped through pages until she finally settled on a regulation about unapproved structures, something completely irrelevant to plants. It was a weak defense, and everyone in the room knew it. When it was my turn to speak, I laid everything out with calm precision. Precise measurements proving my plants were within the allowed height. Time-stamped photos of the garden before it was destroyed. Email records showing my repeated efforts to clarify HOA guidelines. And most damning of all, security footage of Sandra gleefully tearing through my property with a rented bulldozer. The room fell silent. No one moved. Even the board members who had once backed her looked stunned. The vote was swift and unanimous. Sandra was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. You've abused your authority, the vice president said firmly, and you've exposed this association to serious legal risk. Then came the real sting. The HOA will not be covering your legal expenses. A full audit of the HOA's finances during your tenure will begin immediately. Sandra looked like the ground had just dropped out beneath her. Her personal life began to unravel just as quickly. As a real estate agent, her reputation depended on trust, and her brokerage didn't want any part of the scandal. She was placed on unpaid leave pending the outcome of her criminal case. 3 weeks later, the final blow landed. My attorney delivered a civil lawsuit totaling over $78,000 in damages. The breakdown included the cost of the destroyed plants, irrigation repairs, full landscaping restoration, legal fees, and punitive damages for the sheer malice of her actions. As she read the figure, her tough exterior finally cracked. Her hands trembled. Her voice dropped to a whisper. This will bankrupt me. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The consequences spoke for themselves.